how good the movie was at that moment if I looked up during that square making. But I found it did go faster if you do everything in sections, just like I've explained earlier. So do a lot of the circles at the same time. You know, put the circles down and then come do another set of something else, and then come back and maybe do the white area, and then put it down and then come back and do it. And it kind of makes it a lot easier when you have many of your squares in different processes, so that if you get bored of going around the borders all the time, you can do something different with your squares up until the final end of your project. Back on the corner again, we are doing our 3-2-3 configuration. And 2 chains, and back in again for the final 3. Okay, and you can obviously tell where the starting and the stopping point of this particular rotation is because of the color change. Back on the runway again. So overall, though, this is probably one of the most coolest blankets I've ever done. I've not really done much granny square work. I've only done like tutorial size stuff that is just a sample, so I never really get an opportunity to make very many granny square blankets because I just don't have time, because I'm always filming something along the way. So we're coming up to the end of this rotation. Okay, chain 1, and this is part of the starting of the corner, so we have to use this as the final when we're going in. So this is the final 3 to finish off this side of the corner. And of course, to make the corner complete, chain 2, 1 and 2, and then sticking your hook into the top, pulling it through and through. And now let's cast off. So just taking your fancy dancy scissors, cutting it over your hand, pulling it out, and just like we did on the white, push it backward and holding it, stabilizing it so that you can continually have a loop holding around your finger, grabbing the material and throwing it through that loop, just like so. And now grab the material, pulling it through, and now go into the top stitch, pulling it through. And we want to do the same concept that we've done before. We just want to continually work your way through the stitches and at least get past the first gap, so that when you go to do the seaming of your granny squares together, that the seam will actually catch, and so then this will not become a loose string for you in the end. So there you go, and that is that part of the tutorial. So you can go onto the sheets and change your colors as many times as you want to, and then move along to actually fastening them together. Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.
So let's begin to actually assemble the squares together, and I've already jumped far ahead. And what I did is I cleaned the surface of my floor, and if you have carpet or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But I actually figured out the pattern that I wanted on the floor prior to taking it to the table. And each time that I go to the table, all I just do is I just grab them in sequence, so just put them on top of each other, and then put them back on the table in the exact order from which I got it. So we want to transfer from here to a surface that we're working on. It's kind of difficult to be able to crochet on your hands and knees on the floor, so I recommend transferring it to a table that's more comfortable for you. So my kitchen table happens to be like at a bar height of something that I preferred in a kitchen table, so it actually works out pretty convenient. But the height of the table, maybe even a counter might be better. I find myself, just the way that I'm working with this project, that it's better to stand and actually crochet this stuff together than it is to sit on the couch and etc. And by keeping it laid out on the table like this, it's actually to keep it more organized. So I told you before, we actually did everything in sequence. So basically now we just take our squares and just lie them back down in sequence, just like so. And you'll see that there's actually a color pattern going on, so you really can tell if you put a square in the wrong position. If you're following a pattern, it's very easy to tell at that point. So let's bring the camera closer, and what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to start and actually fasten these together.
When I put the squares down on the table, we always have a good side and we have a bad side, so we have to make sure, and if this is something you might want to go for, you just might want it random, but you will see a definite difference from one side to another. One side actually looks a lot more bumpier and a lot more shapier, when the other one actually side kind of looks more flat. So in my fact, I just want it to look more flat on one side, and then all the bowl shaping kind of idea. You will see it kind of wants to flex up like a bowl of cereal anyway. Now where we ended our square, you can see it's right there, and it doesn't really matter where it appears on the blanket. Because this is square, we can just throw it down and not have to worry about it. So let's begin to assemble these together, and I want you to be a little bit generous on the tail of this slip knot that we're doing. So about 4 to 5 inches, wrapping it around your finger twice, or just do a slip knot that makes sense for you. So wrapping it around your finger twice, taking the back over the forward, and then we've done that before. So let's pull it snug. Now, we want to attach the 2 squares together, and we want to attach it like it's a sandwich, just like so. Okay, so we want to stick it in first square, going through, go through to the second, and now grabbing the straggler and the working piece, pulling it through. So now you have 2 on your hook. And what I want you to do is just use your fingers and pull the furthest one up and over, and that counts as one of the single crochet. And now I'm still holding the straggler. I want to trap that straggler so it's not seen. And just like you see the loose ends, eventually we're going to put those loose ends into the actual working seam on the other side. But we'll cover that when we get to that point. So now what I want you to do is every time you enter a corner, always put 2 double crochets. Now we are working just on the one side itself, so we're actually going to be coming in this direction in later part of this tutorial. So grabbing both of the material, pull it through, okay, and now just single crochet as normal. So the first one's always kind of tricky because you are working with a lot of yarn at the same time, so you might want to take your time and actually focus on getting those yarn through, just like so. So now whatever the straggler is left over, make sure you pull everything tight, and whatever straggler is left over, we just want to put on top of the line as if we were doing a regular circle. So each one of the squares has 3 double crochets, a gap, which is 1, and then 3. So we want to go into the 1 gap here, and then we want to go into the gap, we want to go to the first stitch on the one side, matching it to the first stitch on the other. Let's lay down the straggler on top and single crochet. That's how hard this is. So going to the next stitch available, okay, going to the next stitch available on the back side, keeping that straggler, okay, and go to the third one, just matching it. And once you get to a certain point, you'll notice it just wants to match up on its own. Now every time you get to a gap, this is only considered a 1. So we just want to go right into the gap itself, making sure that straggler is still sitting down in the middle. And now we're back onto the third one again. Okay, keep that straggler in. Now you will notice as we go along here is that where we finished the square on the outside, you'll notice that it's almost difficult to find the third section when it comes to way over here. And so that's where we have to improvise on every time you hit a spot like that. So we're actually going to focus on that. On this side, it doesn't matter so much to be able to hide that air, but on the other side, because you can see this white stuff actually leaking through just like so, it's going to matter that you actually try to do it consistently every time. So let's match. Okay, going into the next one, and the next one in the back, and now we're back onto the gap again. And next one. Now this is where we fastened off, and you can see that I've rotated it around. So we want to make sure we try to capture that also into this particular stitch row as well. And then you're not worried about your actually squares falling apart at a later time. So in this fact here, it appears that there's only 2 here, but in actual fact I've missed a stitch. So let's pull out. This is what I love about crochet, is that it's easily fixable if you're making a mistake. So let's reposition and grab into the first one, and the first one in the back. Okay, go into the second, okay, third, and now into the gap. Okay, and now let's go in. So you're going to find that where you finished off, it's going to be very hard to find that third piece. So what I gotta get you to do is fake the middle one if you have to. For example, actually this one's not too bad, but this one's actually showing all 3 on both sides. But if you have to fake one in order to keep the consistency, fake the one in the middle where you're doing the double. Okay, so now this square is almost attached, but at the very last square piece, I want you to put 2 single crochets. Okay, so now that's fastened together, and you can see the other side, it's nice and tugged together. So now we want to grab the next 2 that are in the line. So grab the next 2 and pulling up and up with the next one, and we want to keep this string really tight together. So just kind of pull it snug, grabbing the material. Let's put that back in my hands properly so we can do it, and then single crochet. So that was 1 right into the gap, right into the edge. Let's do another one. So we're going to, every time we're doing the one side, when this row is not completed, we're actually going to do a double into each one of the corners. So let's continue to match. And so you basically get the procedure here is that we just keep matching and matching and matching all the way to the end. This is the third and the third in the back. And now we're ready for the gap. So just right into the gap itself. Okay, and just keep on going. So let's move our camera fast forward to getting this all done. And I'll meet you at the end on how I want you to fasten this off at the last part of it. So we're coming up to the very final set of 3. Matching it exactly, and then on the final corner that you will see, just like so, I want you to stick your hook in and make 2 single crochets as you normally did before on any of the ones that you found along the way. Now just taking your hand, and I always cut over my hand just like so. It provides a nice, probably about 4-inch, 3 to 4 inch straggler. And now just pull your needle up so it pulls out, pull this snug, and then go to the second stitch along the line. Second stitch, put in your hook, and then what I want to do is I want to grab that string that's hanging, the straggler, so just using your other finger, just kind of form it through, and now let it go and just pull it. And so that actually forms a knot onto itself. And what I want to do is when I go to do the edge of the border is that I want to lay this down into the edge section itself, so I actually trap it into position. So every time we get to the edge, just do that exact thing. And what we need to do now is to finish up the actual going in the other direction.